Yeah, so I'm going to cover how we're able to create asset models even if we don't have a BIM model. And then the scale of maturity through that process. We've been working with some pretty major projects, reverse engineering them of existing buildings. So here's some hospitals that we've been working with. Dudley Hospital's 4,000 rooms, that's 9,000. That's Sodexo in Manchester, 14,000 spaces. And the most recent one that we've just completed is for Skanska's London hospital estate, which is 18,000 rooms. And quite significant in that the Barts example, that's Barts and Royal London, it was actually a state-of-the-art BIM project back in the 2000s. They were using architectural desktop with parametric drivers in it. They were bringing that out into Navisworks. They were using a room datasheet application that was all coordinated. So really, they were producing coordinated BIM data long before anybody else was working in this area. They were then taking that information out into O&M. That was then passed through into Archibus because the FM team didn't have an integrated system to be able to manage the information going forwards. The room data sheets, 18,000 rooms, were generated in Word. There's lots of changes take place on hospitals, and contractually they've got to keep them up to date. So they were editing them manually in Word for 10 years. What could possibly go wrong? And the information about plan maintenance was being managed in concept. So what we've got there is coordinated information coming out into uncoordinated silos. What we've been doing over the last 2 or 3 months is pulling all that together into an asset information model. So we've now got coordinated asset data which they can then manage going forwards, and it's saved them from having embarrassing penalties and things like that on the project. And one of the issues is that people think, and a lot of people in the design and construction side think of FM as being planned maintenance. And that's an important part of things because it's statutory control, but there's a lot more to asset management than planned maintenance. And therefore, there's a range of different software applications that need to be managed. So what we have done, I think we're probably the first to do it, we've generated data services, web services between these different applications so that we glue them together. So the result is that we've got a coordinated asset information model and a digital O&M. So what we're doing in this area is really what 3D Repo is doing in the construction area and in the geometric model area. So we can end up in situations where we've got a federated geometric model connected to a federated asset model. We, about 2 years ago, we were working on the BRE project, and Sensat did a scan of the site. And we then took that information into Activeplan, and in a simple model, but no geometry, no objects with asset information, but we're still able to make meaningful information. So we're able to, for example, connect assets in that environment back to the asset data and also back to product information. Here we've got a simple example of a 2D spatial model. It looks like a drawing, but actually it's a floor plan in a SQL database in the cloud. And what we've got there, we've got intelligent spaces. Now, why do I call them intelligent spaces? Well, if you click on that, it knows what it is. It can also produce a schedule of accommodation which will always map and match the floor plan because actually they're just two views of the same database. And here we're drilling into one of those rooms and we can see the information about that space. And now we're drilled into the product information. So we're at the manufacturer's information now. And we can generate a digital data sheet from that. So we're standardizing the way the information is being presented. We can also look at what's been purchased for that particular space. And we can then look at that and tie it back to a simple, low-cost 360 photograph of that particular space. So it means that we can then have a visual model, a visual tie back to the asset data without having to generate any 3D detailed models. So we're just using the data that's being captured, perhaps for snagging. One of the challenges that we've got is that on new build, we've got a lot of information which is being generated digitally, but then when we get beyond stage 4, it drops off the cliff, and we end up with documents and spreadsheets, and we end up with a big gap in the data. And then we end up with people having to go and spend maybe £100,000, £150,000 surveying buildings that have just been built to find the asset data. Mad. So what we're trying to do is put in place a series of templates, data sets, product libraries, which essentially will satisfy an asset information requirement, will then automatically be validated so that the information is tested right the way through, so we end up with a coordinated asset information model. So the point about this is that we can then go from a geometric model, we can extract the information out and test it in a COBie environment, so we can then, at this stage, at the very early stages, we can produce an O&M before anything's been finally installed. Yes, there's information that needs to be added afterwards, but I'll come on to that later. So the important thing there is that we're coordinating the information. We can populate then any software application that the teams want to use. So the building blocks that we've got, we're creating an asset information requirement, which means that we're enabling the asset team to say exactly what information they want through the process. We can test and validate that information so it becomes guaranteed. We've then got a product library which enables a lot of the information to be pre-prepared. And that then goes into a project information model that generates a digital O&M. So in essence, what we're doing is we're connecting through the whole process a key that is carrying through, right through for procurement, the production of O&M, into asset management. And when I say a key, what we're actually doing, we're starting with a reference. This is before the design work's been done, any design work. You're starting off by saying, what are we actually going to call a door? And then we'll pop that into a Revit family, and then that then becomes used to procure the information or procure the product, and then ties back into the asset information model. So the principle that we're working on here is, at the moment, we've got tools like 3D Repo that are very good at federating, coordinating, and validating geometry. The problem is, the data, if it's not in the model, or even if it's been put in the model and it's wrong, it then throws the client and they end up with unusable information. So the process that we're following is to actually reverse the trend, so the client takes control of the process at the very beginning and expressly says what information they want from standard libraries. So it makes it a lot easier for the supply chain to satisfy those requirements. And part of that is a product library network. And that's one of the elements that we've integrated with 3D Repo, which you'll see in a moment. The product library network is really a content management system. So what it allows you to do is hold information in a standardized format, but draw it from manufacturer's information, from different product libraries like BIM Store and BIM Object, and you can hold them in a standardized reusable form. Here, for example, we've got a boiler, and it's held in a standardized form, but what it's also doing, it's recording which project and which system that particular product was used on, which is fantastic for a client. It means that they're able to see where those products were installed. And in fact, we're working with Wilmot Dixon, and they really want to know where the products have been installed in their buildings. What it also does, it allows you to have a schedule of the products and materials that have gone in. So a caretaker, for example, in a college, has got a very simple asset information model. They don't need a 3D model to tell them where the boiler house is. They work there, they live there. But what they do want to know is the information about the boiler. So they're able to click on that and go straight through to the boiler that they've got installed, not a catalogue that's got 6 boilers in it. There's 150 pages that they've got to find the information they need. It's structured so they've got only the information they need. Somebody else might come along and they need a 2D plan because they don't know the site. So the COBE data, in this case, is generating the floor plan in the system. Or they can have a 3D model, and the 3D model, actually all the data is held actually in a database. So we're actually using really the object simply to locate the item, and the data is actually held in the database, so it becomes much more easily managed and updated. You don't need to have people that have got Revit skills in the asset team to manage that, and then we go back to the product library. So finally, on data capture, what we've been doing is doing a lot of work in this area because a lot of the work that we really need from an asset management point of view is done by installers. And the installers aren't using the 3D model. What they're doing is being able to test the data that they've got. And this is highlighting the fact that of all the information, where it's green, it's got the information that the client has asked for. Where it's red, the stuff that still hasn't been collected. It's not unreasonable. You've got expected life and the duration and warranty information. So you can pick that up. We generate that as a series of spreadsheets that can be collected. And we pre-populate forms, so the spreadsheets or forms, and they can fill in the information that is outstanding. So here we've got the integration that we've done this last week with 3D Repo. And here we've got the model, we've got a floor plan. We can go through and see the chairs and furniture on each of the floors. We can click into this and we can see the individual floor, the individual chair. On the right-hand side, on the left-hand side there you can take a photograph and see the condition. Now it's connected back to the product library, so the manufacturer can be keeping that information up to date. Now we've got that same data now we're seeing in 3D Repo. So we're then connecting that back. So what we've now got is the 3D Repo model with all the asset data all coordinated, but the data didn't need to be actually in the original Revit or Navis model that was used to create this. We can then interrogate it. It's also identifying which room it's in. So the space, which is a real boon for FM people, because normally the asset information they get is just a product. They don't even get told where it is. So we're querying that. And again, every time it's going off, it's going to Activeplan's web service to pick that up. So here we've got a federated geometric model connected to a federated asset model. And here we're then able to go back to the detail on that. So basically what we're doing is going from a federated model and tying the two things together and creating an integrated aim. And again, this can be done retrospectively. So if you've got projects, for example, that are maybe completing or indeed existing buildings, then it's something that we in 3D Repo can pull together and provide. Thank you.